Hey everybody, Sarah here. So today I'm going to be doing a follow-up video for the last video that I did. If you have not watched it, I highly recommend you go do that. I did get a little bit heated there at the end with some of the morph names for things that are not different. So that's that video. If you would like to watch me get angry, go watch that one. So today we're actually going to be doing, like I said, a follow-up to that, which is going to be just former names for corn snakes that are kind of out of date that we don't really use anymore. Before I jump into it though, I just want to ask that you subscribe. I know that only about 40% of my audience is actually subscribed to me, so if you're really interested in corn snake content, that's what I do here. So if you would like to see more of that, please subscribe. It really helps out the channel. And comment down below something that you'd like to see in the future, or maybe something that I missed with all of these morph names. Whether it's something new that you are unsure of, or just something that you have heard here and there that you, like I said, really aren't sure of, or that you just would like me to cover in a future video, I'm happy to do that. So to start out with this, I'm just going to, I think, do this in alphabetical order. I'm pretty sure I have it in alphabetical order. If not, you'll just have to forgive me. But we're going to start out with the former name for Cinder. And the former name for that is actually either Ashy or Morph Z. The reason that it was originally called Morph Z was because Rich Zukowski was the one who found it originally. And a lot of people called him Z, so they sort of just like named it after him. So Rich Zukowski found the Cinder mutation, and then he named it the Ashy mutation because he thought that it looked like something else that was called Ashy, but that name just didn't really stick. Somebody else started calling it Cinder, and then there was a poll done, and people voted for what the name should be, and so they ended up calling it Cinder instead of Ashy, which, for the record, I think that we should always respect the wishes of the person who actually found a mutation to keep the name of it, if at all possible. It's the same reason that if we ever found out that Buff and Toffee were the same mutation, we would actually stick with Buff and drop the Toffee, because Buff came first. So even though I would much prefer to have Toffee and Erratum over Buff and Orange, it's just sort of a respect to the person who found that mutation. The next one that I have is Lavender. Lavender had a couple of previous different names, the most common one being Mocha. And once again, this was Rich Zukowski who found the Lavender mutation. He was one of the biggest breeders when corn snakes were really being bred and being sold as pets and stuff like that. So he has a lot of mutations under his name. And he originally called Lavender Mocha because the original Lavender actually was not like purple. It was more of a brown color. And you still see this with a lot of lavender lines. If you ever see a lavender and you kind of go, oh, that doesn't really look purple. It's because it was originally called Mocha for a reason. We have actually bred out a lot of the melanin, like the natural melanin that is in a lot of wild corn snakes. And since we've bred that out, that sort of dark muddy color is no longer there, and so you get the more bright purple color of most lavenders today. But originally, the original lavender was actually much more closely related to wild caught, so it had that sort of muddy appearance of a sort of mocha. It's also in the past been called both chocolate and cocoa for a similar reason. Mocha was the one that really stuck among those three, but then once a lot of the lavenders were being bred out into different lines, they were showing more and more purple tones and less of the brown chocolatey tones, so people started calling it lavender instead. The next one on the list is Lava, and Lava was interesting because it was one of the first hypomutations to pop up. I think it was actually the second one, right after hypomelanistic A, and people, of course, were breeding it to other things to find out what it was, and they originally called it just transparent or translucent hypo, because a regular hypomelanistic A, you can still like see the melanin pretty clearly, even though it's faded into like a brown color, but with Lava, you really got these sort of translucent purple colorations where the melanin would be. So translucent or transparent hypo was what it was originally called before they settled on the name Lava. The next one that I want to talk about is actually Keys, which is kind of a weird one because it's not a mutation, it's actually a locality, as in the Florida Keys. The Keys corn snake was actually originally just called the rosy rat snake. And even, see, corn snakes originally were called the rosy rat snake, and then the more common term for it became the corn snake. But Keys, for a very long time, kept the term rosy rat snake regardless. And then it was determined that Keys, of course, were just a different type of corn snake, and so they're not really called that anymore, but some people will still say rosy rat snake despite that. The next one on the list, which I talked about not that long ago, is Microscale. Microscale was actually originally called Micropave, and I believe that pave is actually the word for scale in the original language of the person who found the Microscale gene, and they decided that Microscale was actually what they wanted to call it. I actually did talk to them, and they, I was calling it Micropave, and they said, please don't call it Micropave, it's Microscale. So even though Micropave was the original name for it that they gave, they have pretty much said, do not call it Micropave anymore. Microscale is the term. So just an interesting fact about that. The palmetto corn snake. Interestingly enough, the palmetto corn snake was sort of originally called the calico corn snake. Now, we're not 100% sure. It was only called calico for a very short period of time. And there was also the term confetti corn snake running around a little bit. So the original confetti corn snake was actually not a gene mutation. The original confetti corn snake was something that looked similar to palmetto, but it was not a gene mutation that was reproducible. So when we found the original palmetto, some people were calling it the confetti, some people were calling it the calico, because originally the original confetti corn snake was sometimes called calico as well. And of course, I don't know if you know anything about other types of rat snakes, but there is a calico gene mutation in Chinese beauty rat snakes that looks very, very similar to the palmetto corn snake. It's a little more tan and not like white. It's not really a leucistic mutation, but it does have the light ground color with all the different speckles on it. So a lot of people called it calico and or confetti before it was like firmly named the palmetto corn snake. The next one that I think is really interesting is Peach. Peach has now been determined to be an incomplete dominant hypomutation that sort of adds some really interesting pink colors to the snake, but it was originally not just called Peach. Peach was sort of just what was settled on after everything was over. It was originally called the mystery line of hypos, which you get a lot of these. A lot of people just have mystery hypos, but the mystery line of hypos, I believe Rich Hume is the one who headed that up, and he then called it his peach phase, or just his peach line. And it was originally in lavenders, so there was this sort of lavender was mixed with some caramel, so there was a peach lavender that was mixed with a hypo caramel, and then of course they got some babies that were definitely not hypos, and then we come to find out that there is this other mutation that is not hypo A in that lavender line. And then after some breeding trials, after years and years and years of breeding trials actually, it was determined to be its own incomplete dominant mutation. So we have, like I said, the mystery line, like Rich Hume's mystery line, and then it's also, like I said, been called peach phase or just peach hypo, and now we've just settled on peach. The next one in line is actually the Terrazzo mutation in corn snakes. Terrazzo actually used to be called granite, but somebody along the line apparently did not get the memo, and when the anerythristic type A mutation was mixed with the diffuse mutation, they decided to call it granite for the color, which does make sense if you think about, like, when I think about like the rock granite, I do think about that sort of slate gray color that you would get with the anerythristic mixing it with the diffused. I don't really think of the color or even the pattern of terrazzo, but when you search terrazzos, you will likely see a lot of the term original granite, or if you search original granite corn snake, you'll probably see photos of a lot of terrazzos, because people will call a lot of their pure terrazzo line original granite still. And last but not least, has to be my favorite one, that is the Ultra mutation. I loved researching Ultra and Ultramel through this whole thing when I was writing my books. I have 2 books. I have one corn snake book that's on the base mutations, so Ultra, Cinder, Motley, all of those things are in there. And then I have another one that's on the selectively bred morphs, so you're going to get like your keys information in there, as well as fluorescent and vanishing stripe and stuff like that. So if you are interested in learning about those things, this kind of stuff in more detail is in my books as well. But Ultra was one of the most fun things to research because there were so many different terms for it, and it took such a long time for it to be proven out as an incomplete dominant mutation with AML. And I think it's really awesome we got that, but here are a few of the different terms people were using for it. People actually called it dilute at one point. We do have a dilute mutation now. It is not at all related to the Ultra gene mutation, but some people were calling it dilute because it did kind of dilute the color a little bit as a hypotype. Some people called it T-positive AML, which I actually I like that. I like that term. I guess we aren't really 100% sure if ultras are T-positive. I assume that they are. If you are interested in learning about T-positive, the term is actually pronounced tyrosinase, and it is a sort of a pigment. I'm not going to go into details on that now. We don't actually have an official T-positive mutation in corn snakes, but I think that if we had left it at T-positive AML, that would have been really awesome. I used to have Chinese beauty rat snakes, as you may have noticed, it just throughout my videos, but they also have a T-positive and a T-negative. Our amelanistic in corn snake is going to be T-negative, so it was really cool that T-positive AML did pop up in all of this. The Ultra hypo popped up, and that's where Ultra originally ended up landing. So similar to the like peach hypo and peach line, we had our Ultra hypo and Ultra line of hypo, and so we ended up, of course, just settling with the term Ultra. But before we settled with the term Ultra, a few other cool and interesting and fun ones were popped around. Pseudomels and pseudo hypo were both thrown around. So it's like once they determined that it was allelic to the amelanistic mutation, this sort of pseudomel came along. But since it's a hypotype, they also thought pseudo hypo maybe was the one to go with. And then even quasi-mels and quasi-hypos both also popped up. So I thought those were really interesting. But they ended up settling on Ultra, which, even though I like T-positive AML a lot better, I understand why that might be confusing for a lot of people if you don't really understand genetics anyway. Just adding one more term in there is just going to be really confusing. So that's all I have for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something. If you like this video, like I said, please subscribe and share. I know that there's a lot of people who watch my videos who are in corn snake groups and stuff, and you might be really confused about names, or you just thought it was interesting. So if you are in a corn snake group that you think might find this interesting, please share it there. And if there's anything that you want to hear about in the future, just comment down below and let me know. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.